Right. The sports generals are on patrol, and let's welcome in the other generals to the show now. First, we got Mr. Brian Fraley, and then we got the other dude, Jay, or as we call him, or that is what we call him. I don't know what I'm talking about. I've gone crazy. Mr. Manilegs as usual.
What's up? What's going on?
I knew you guys were backstage. I just wanted to change things up a little bit.
I like that intro, Josh. Thanks for bringing us in like that.
Yeah. I wanted to do something a little more fun today.
Spice things up a little bit on
Exactly.
Cinco De Mayo. I like it.
Exactly. Keep you guys on your toes.
You gotta.
By the way, for those of you celebrating, happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yes, happy Cinco de Mayo to all the amateur alcoholics out there. I hope you enjoy your day. Don't drink and drive.
Yep.
Everybody be safe and enjoy the holiday.
Yep.
Call it Uber.
Hey, B. Ward already said great intro, so maybe that's our new thing going forward.
Yeah, that was clean, Josh. I really like that introduction.
Should I bring that over to So What's the Catch?
I like it.
All right.
Why not?
Anyway, so we are here for – this is not So What's the Catch. This is the Sports Generals. We do this every Thursday from 12:30 to 1:30 here on the So What's the Catch Facebook page. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the Sports Journals YouTube channel. Like the So What's the Catch Facebook page, and make sure you like this video as well. Okay, got all that taken care of. Let's get down to business. So the NFL draft was this past weekend, and it was pretty underwhelming in terms of players selected and stuff. Like you said yesterday, Brian, I don't think this is going to be a very memorable draft looking back.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially without the Browns having a first round pick. We're used to being at the top of the draft. So waiting until after the first round to go was a little different for Browns fans. But yeah, I think of all the years to not have a first round pick, this wasn't a bad year to do it.
Yeah.
It's very different. Like you alluded to, now having the first pick in the draft, first round pick rather. It's a little, it could be a little wearisome. But I think that it was a successful draft overall for us, and we're going to go a little bit more in detail throughout the show. But it definitely was a little unique, to say the least.
You did end up correcting yourself by saying first round, but originally you said first overall. We've had the first overall pick in the past couple drafts back in 2017 and 2018, so you weren't far off by saying that, Jay.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's aware.
So, but what if you had to give the Browns a letter grade for this draft? What would you give it? Me personally, it just kind of felt like an average draft. I didn't think we got anybody that was like, oh my God, we got this fantastic player. So it just felt average for me. So I gave them a C.
Yeah, I gave them a little higher grade. I went with a B, just because I thought that they did a good job of filling our needs. They drafted the positions that we really needed help on. And it's hard to grade these guys before you see them on a field in NFL football.
Right.
So that's why I'm giving them a little more credit and going with a B over a C. I'm not going to hold it against them that we didn't have a first-round pick because that helped us bring Deshaun Watson to Cleveland. So overall, I think that it was a successful draft for the Browns.
I think I went a little higher. I'm not going to say A plus, but I'm going to say A minus, B plus, because again, what did this draft accomplish? We were able to get our quarterback. I mean, albeit it was a trade, we have Deshaun Watson. We are set for years to come off of that, making those trading away those draft picks rather. And then for two, this draft, it was all about team needs and everything that we needed, which was interior linemen. We needed a place kicker. We needed secondary, and those were only the positions that we targeted this year. Yes, we got a wide receiver as well, but everything we needed was targeted in this draft. Unlike in the past, we just was pretty much reaching for the stars and taking whatever was available. So it's like we had a plan in place. They took to that plan. They executed that plan graciously, and we got our quarterback as a result of it.
So, Jay, what I'm kind of hearing you say is instead of just doing like best player available, the Browns said, okay, we need to target these specific areas and go after players that fit those areas. Is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you are a good team or a good organization and you draft well, you go more for what's the best versus the best available, what's the team needs, right? And this is the first time that I could think of in recent memory that we just went straight with team needs. And we didn't rush or try to trade up to take someone that maybe was a project. We sat pat. We took everything that fell into our laps. We didn't feel pressured. And I think the move that really sparked a lot of talk was the taking the kicker in the fourth round. But if you think about it, who else in our division took a kicker in the same round? So it seemed like we using our intel to say, hey, you know what? We think the Steelers might move up and try to get a kicker this round. So we probably need to go ahead and let's get that kicker as well. And it just seemed like it was a lot of strategy that was used, unlike in the past. But team needs is for good teams, and we are starting to find ourselves in that position now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, Jay. To expand the conversation out from just the Browns, I think a lot of teams kind of did that. You saw, like when Detroit traded up from number 32 to, I believe it was number 12, if I remember correctly, to take Jameson Williams. I think that was them doing the same thing you were just talking about, recognizing a team need and saying, let's go get a big-time wide receiver. When New Orleans traded up to take Olave, I believe it was, I think that was the same thing. So I think that was a lot of team strategies was let's not just go for the best player available because we may already have a player in that role. Let's take a player who we think fits a role that we need to fill.
Not to mention that this was a weak draft as well. So, it wasn't that many those sure bet Pro Bowlers in this draft. So a lot of teams probably adapted to that strategy because of that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jayson. I think that had a lot to do with it. When there's no real outstanding best available players on the board, what are you going to do? You're going to draft, what you need. That is why I gave, the Browns a B over a C, Josh, was because of that very reason. I did think that they stuck to the game plan. They didn't reach for anything. I think they got their guys right where they wanted to get them in terms of value and whatnot. I really like David Bell. I think that getting a receiver that low, he's pretty good. He's going to be a good one for a guy that was taken as low as he was. And, we went out and got our guy in Amari Cooper by trading that day 3 pick. So, I mean, you're not going to get a better wide receiver on day 3 than Amari Cooper. So
fifth round.
Right. So that's a great move as well. So, yeah, there were some things that we really did well. But, yeah, overall, we stuck to team needs. And I think that was kind of the vibe across the draft, like you guys both were saying.
Yeah. I understand, Brian, what you were saying last week about how he didn't have the capital to move up. And looking back, I probably shouldn't have said anything about moving up because duh, we traded a bunch of our first-round picks to get Deshaun Watson. But when I just look at our receiving core, Amari Cooper, DPJ, Anthony Schwartz, David Bell, I personally view Amari as a number 2. I know he was the number 1 receiver when he was with the Raiders, and I guess you could say he was the number 1 in Dallas. It kind of felt like him and CD were kind of interchangeable in that regard. But overall, I like Amari Cooper, but I'm just not sure he is a number 1 receiver. I don't know.
I think it's clear that he's not a number 1 receiver anymore when they were willing to trade him for a 5th-round pick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the book on Amari Cooper right now. He's on, his best playing days are behind him. Not to say he's not good anymore. He's still a good, valuable receiver. But I agree, Josh. He's not a Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams or, A.J. Brown, these other big-name receivers that went around the league. Not as talented as those guys. I'll agree with you there.
Right.
But think about this also, guys. The last few years, he was technically the number 1 wide receiver for the Cowboys, and he did get multiple Pro Bowl selections. He also had over 1,000 yards receiving, leading the team. Yes, he's declined over the years, but he was a number 1 receiver even when he's with the Raiders. It's just a matter of finding that counterpart from him, and a lot of teams had struggled prior to the Cowboys. But the older you get as a wide receiver, you run better routes. You start to develop those safety nets where the ball's going to be available and I can catch it, shield it. He's always had hands. Speed-wise, he's been teetering that line, but he was a number 1 wide receiver for years. It's just a matter of Father Time catching up with him. But
Right.
We'll see what he do with this Browns. So.
That's why I was saying I would have liked it if somehow the Browns could have put together some sort of package to move up into the top 15 to get one of those top-tier wide receivers. But I understand what you were saying, Brian, that we just didn't have the amount of picks that it would take to possibly move up into that range.
Yeah, I think Amari Cooper is as good as you're going to get because there is no chance of us trading up into the first. I don't think there's a chance of us getting back into the first round period, let alone getting up high enough to take, the first round receivers. No receiver went past number 19. So all of the receivers taken in the first round were in the top 19 picks. So we would have had to have at least gotten into that range.
Right.
If we wanted to get a real first round impact guy. So yeah, it just wasn't in the cards for us. So Amari Cooper, it's a good fit. But yeah, I agree with you, Josh. I'd love to see one more star receiver on this team. But we'll see.
There's a lot of rumbles. There's a lot of rumbling around the league that we fleeced the Cowboys for Amari, for 5th. So, again, yeah, given the lack of, let's say, superior wide receiving talent, I think we could all agree that he was the best wide receiver. Like, Mari is better than all the wide receivers in this year's draft. So, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know about
I'll
that.
take him. I'll take him.
I think Wilson, Olave, and Drake London are all capable of being better receivers than Amari Cooper. But over the rest of them, yeah.
Yeah, years to come. But right now, he's the best wide receiver.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
The Browns are in win now mode. They're not. Let's plan for the future type thing. If that was their mindset, they wouldn't have traded this year's first round pick, next year's first round pick, and however many other picks were in that package to get Deshaun Watson. They probably wouldn't have gone out and made the trade for Amari Cooper, and they wouldn't have made the other moves they've done this offseason if they were not in win now mode.
Win now.
Yeah, last season, Amari Cooper, though, his numbers weren't, they don't blow anyone away. 68 catches for 865 yards. He did have 8 touchdowns, which is really good. So he's good at getting in the end zone, and that's important. But, some of those guys in the draft, they can go out there and get 70 catches and 1,000 yards, I think.
Yeah.
I think he missed like 4 games too. I want to believe like 4 or
No,
5
he
games.
played 15 games last season, so
Oh,
he missed
15.
2. Yeah, he
Okay.
missed 2.
Okay.
Do you think
Okay.
part of the reason Amari's numbers were down is because he was paired with CD Lamb and Lamb got some of those touches and stuff?
Yeah, he's just not a number one
Yeah.
receiver anymore. They weren't using him like a number one receiver anymore. I think CD Lamb definitely left him in that department. So yeah, that's why I think they were willing to let go of him for as cheap as they did. Was they weren't willing to continue to pay him what they were paying him for those kind of numbers. So it kind of made sense from both sides. But yeah, I agree. I mean, getting Amari Cooper for a 5th, 6th round pick, that's incredible. So
Right.
And there's 2 things to that answer too. Yes, I do think that CeeDee Lamb took away from, of course, which that was expected to take away from some of his input, but also Dak didn't have a good year last year, and as a result, and it was on record that he was Dak's favorite target, and however good he did was how good Dak did, and vice versa. But Dak didn't do good, so as a result, he put up those pedestrian numbers. So I think those 2 reasons also factored into him not having such a stellar year this year.
Yeah. So looking at the draft more from just a general perspective, who are your biggest winners of the draft? Like, who are your biggest winners in terms of teams?
I really like the Jets draft just because they had so many high picks. I think that they've got some players that can make an impact immediately. So I really like their draft. If I had to pick a winner, I would say they're probably my winner.
Okay.
I like what Denver did. Denver was able to, again, add on to their pass rush, taking the kid from from Georgia. And they already had a good offseason as it is, just from the acquisitions they made. So if I had to say the winners of this year's draft, I do like what the Jets did, but I like what Denver did as well. So, and I think Kansas City, they surprisingly, they did okay as well.
Yeah, I agree with you guys about the Jets. Despite my criticism of the Ravens yesterday, I still think they had a solid draft.
Mm-hmm.
Despite what happened with Hollywood Brown, but again, that whole thing makes sense. They're not a pass first team, so why would a wide receiver want to go there anyway? But in terms of a loser, I would say Green Bay, because I felt like Green Bay needed to make a big splash in this draft. Yes, they went out and got Watson, the wide receiver from North Dakota State, in the 2nd round, but I'm really surprised that they kind of stuck to their guns and didn't go, okay, let's try and package these 2 first-round picks together, try and move up in the draft, like a Drake London, a Chris Olave, Jamison Williams, one of those guys, because Aaron Rodgers, he's on a 3-year contract, but is he actually going to play all 3 of those years? We don't know. It feels like it's still going to be a year-to-year type of thing with Aaron Rodgers. So,
yeah, I get what you're saying about going and getting one of the stars of the draft, but I liked their draft overall, though. I did like who they got at the end of the 1st round. I think Quay Walker is a guy that's going to fit right into that team real nicely. He reminds me a lot of AJ Hawk, and he is a guy that just makes a lot of tackles. He was probably the most productive player to come out of that Georgia defense. And there's some big names in the draft from Georgia. So I really like that they got him. Devontae Wyatt from Georgia, too, really good player. So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It would have been great for them to get a weapon for Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think that they had a bad draft. Just because they missed out on one of the top receivers.
And I'm not giving any sympathy to Green Bay or, better yet, to Aaron Rodgers because, this is all his doing. You want to be the highest paid in the league and you want to be the, historically the highest paid quarterback. where you think you're gonna get the funds to like compensate for this? So, I'm not really losing any sleep over them as well. I think they could have did better. They had 2 1s. They could have traded up. You can't tell me anything otherwise that they couldn't have moved up if they really wanted to target one of those wide receivers. They didn't, but they did get their defense shored up, and their defense is nice. But as far as Aaron Rodgers complaining or one pity, hey, that train's done passed because you took all that money. They couldn't pay anybody else on the team. So what do you expect?
Well, interestingly enough, Rodgers commented on the first round of the draft live as it happened, and he wasn't upset with it. He was okay with them taking Quay Walker. He said he really liked them. He was okay with them skipping on a wide receiver with the next pick too. So apparently he was on board with the strategy going into the draft, because if he wasn't on board, he would have said it in that moment. But it seemed to me like he was okay with it. So obviously he's got enough faith in him and his guys that he thinks if they shore up that defense and they can be a lockdown defense, that he's good enough to carry them to a Super Bowl without getting one of those top guys in the draft.
Yeah, I get that. Maybe he's putting himself on too high of a pedestal, though. Like, we view him as one of the top quarterbacks. There's no denying that, but maybe he's just trying to like build himself up a little too high.
Yeah, but what if he would have said, "I hate the pick," and we should have, what if he would have went the other way? Then we'd be saying the opposite. So Aaron Rodgers just can't win, no matter what. He's going to get criticized for it. If he would have came out and said, "This is bullshit. We should have traded those 2 picks up to get a wide receiver," everybody's going to say, "Oh, well, Aaron's, like he's trying to be the GM and this and that." But now he's okay with the picks, and everybody's like, "Well, he thinks he's too good if he thinks he can carry Lazard and Christian Watson to a Super Bowl." So
you think you do a reverse psychology?
People don't like Aaron Rodgers. That's at the end of the day. That's, I think, really what's at the heart of it. People don't like it.
He's probably doing a reverse psychology, like, oh yeah, I love both of these picks. These are phenomenal picks, even though we all know how he is, and you probably don't, but he came with, like you said, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Regardless, no one's going to like him anyway.
Exactly. So probably the biggest storyline going into this draft, or one of the biggest storylines, because you had a couple, was, is anybody going to trade for Baker Mayfield? And the answer was no. It looked like at one point Carolina was going to, but then they ended up not doing that, and they drafted Matt Corral instead. So,
poor Baker.
Yeah. Did you just say poor Baker?
Yeah, I was being sarcastic, though. I mean, hey, he killed his own. He single-handedly, if we want to talk about winners and losers all season, he single-handedly killed not only his draft stock, well, his trade stock, but the target areas that he wanted to go to. I think if he would have handled his way different, not having the podcast show and adding on to the dislike of him, but I think he single-handedly wrecked his own future, and now we can't get a bag of chips for him. And now it's starting to be reports that, maybe the Browns just need to hold on to him. Like, that toxic type of chemistry is not going to be lingering. I think at this stage, what can we do? Like, it costs too much money to cut him. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, what do we do? And I guess that's my question to you two. Like, what is there to do now?
At this point, maybe you just somehow hold on to him until training camp, and usually I don't wish injury upon anybody, but maybe you perhaps hope that somebody's starting quarterback or whatever gets injured, and they become so desperate, they're like, hey, let's trade for Baker Mayfield.
It's going to happen.
Again, I'm not wishing injury upon anybody, but by the same token, it's like you kind of hope somebody does.
Yeah, I mean that the numbers say there's going to be a quarterback that's going to get injured in preseason or minicamp. They're going to, but I think it gets dicey when once that happens, how desperate are we to move on? Because there's a report saying that not only are we willing to trade him, but we're not trying to pay a dime of what's owed on the remainder of his contract. Which that right there seems that's holding back a lot of teams because
He's
they're
not
thinking,
he's not
yeah,
worth the contract. So that's why, part of the reason they don't want to bring him on board is they don't want to pay him what we're paying them. So that has a
yeah,
lot to do with it. So at the end of the day, I think that the Browns might end up just having to cut their losses and cut them because you can't keep them in the locker room. You can't invite them to training camp. You can't have them involved in, organized team activities or any of that stuff because you've
that's
already,
sad.
yeah, you've moved on. He's came out and said, "Look, I don't want to be here anymore." Like he's written his goodbye letter. Like, what are you going to do? Welcome him back into the locker room when you already have Jacoby Brissett and Josh Dobbs in there?
He elected to have a surgery after the season.
Yeah, I think that if something doesn't happen soon, cutting him might be the only option. Honestly.
Yeah. And at this point, I don't know if Pittsburgh early on was saying, "Hey, if you cut him, we'll pick him up." I'm not so sure the Steelers would do that now.
No, not now. No, they got
they
too much tied up.
Yeah.
I mean, when you take a kid in the first round, and they never. When's the last time Steelers ever even took a quarterback in the first round, right? So, yeah, and
I remember them taking a quarterback in the first round was Big Ben.
Yep.
And so they're going to pay. So this kid is going to play eventually. We know Trubisky's going to, screw it up sometime. Give him a shot. He'll mess it up. And then, they're going to have Kenny Pickett in there before you know it. So I think Steelers is off the board for that. I think Panthers might be off the board for it. Seahawks, I don't know, but everyone is an injury away, like you said. And it's going to happen. We don't wish injury on anyone. Yeah. But that's going to happen. It's the nature of the beast.
Right.
It's interesting that Seattle didn't draft a quarterback either.
They didn't.
I was just going to say the same thing. Like, you're telling me, Seattle, that you'd rather have Geno Smith and Drew Lock over Baker Mayfield. That's clearly the message they're sending. And I'm just looking at them like, are you kidding me?
And that's the message I'm receiving. And I wonder if Baker's receiving it as well, because that's got to be a pride hurter. Like, I'm not even better than Geno. And I got nobody to blame but myself.
Right.
He's really screwed this up.
Yeah. Geno's
been a good locker room guy, and he's been willing to, fit whatever role his team has needed him in. And for that reason, he's extended his career and is still in the NFL. And Baker, on the other hand, has not lived up to his contract. He hasn't lived up to his draft pick. He hasn't been a good leader. He's been a problem in the locker room. So it's like, no wonder they value those two over Baker.
Yeah. I just don't get it, man. He could have honestly, and I know he hasn't, and I know he won't. I know he's not watching this show, which he needs to, but if you can use this as a tool to rebuild your career, man, like everything that's at stake now. You swallow your pride. You report to camp. You're not being in the media. You're not bad mouthing your teams. Just going out there, taking your reps, leading the team. We know that Watson might get suspended. So use it as an opportunity to rebuild your trade stock. Like, I don't understand how he doesn't see that. Especially all these teams passed on you. So we know he's very vindictive that way. None of these teams took him, basically traded for him in the draft. So they basically saying, screw you. What we have is better than what you are. So use this as a motivational tool to redefine and recreate yourself. And I just don't see him doing that. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. The other interesting thing with this is, we just mentioned how the Seahawks said, nope, we like Drew Lock and Geno Smith better than you. How about the Houston Texans saying, yeah, we like Davis Mills better than you?
It's unfortunate.
Nothing against Davis Mills. Maybe he turns into a good quarterback.
Who the hell is Davis Mills?
Yeah, ironically enough, he might have been the number 1 pick in this draft if he was in this draft. But still, that's not saying much.
Exactly.
That's not saying much at all.
Right. Davis Mills, I think, is only in his second or third year in the NFL.
Yeah, this is a second year.
And again, this is not an indictment on Davis Mills by any means. Just the fact, though, that the Texans are willing to say, yeah, we like a second-year, unproven quarterback more than Baker Mayfield. If that's not an indictment on Baker Mayfield, I don't know what is.
I agree with you, man. Yeah, like you said, actually you alluded to, Brian. They said that had he got drafted this year, he probably would have been the first pick. And I know that the Texans were real big up on him last year when they actually drafted him. But I mean, you can't tell me, but who would have known that coming into it? Baker Mayfield would be struggling to get on the roster, let alone against Davis Mills.
Never would have thought that
at all.
I think it's hilarious.
It is hilarious.
Yeah,
I love it. I love this tire fire, and hey, just keep it burning.
Yeah, I mean, until something happens, whether Baker Mayfield gets traded or the Browns cut him or something happens, the tire fire is just going to keep burning.
You know, Andrew Berry was quoted as saying that one of the things that helped him improve overall as a GM this year was patience, right? And some are saying that he's probably applying that to the Baker Mayfield situation. Like prior, he probably would have got rid of him, but he's learned to be patient and he can wait this out however long as it needs to be waited out. We waited in the draft. We didn't trade up, trade down. We just took what was available and fell in our laps. His patience, which Baker doesn't have that. So this could be up to Andrew Berry's likings. We'll see.
You know what would be an interesting narrative? The Texans traded us Deshaun Watson, their starting quarterback. It would be funny if we turned around and said, okay, Houston, we'll give you our starting quarterback back. And then these two teams play each other this season, which, by the way, the schedule comes out next week. So what I may or may not do on the show next week, I'm going to put together a mock schedule, and maybe we'll go through it and predict the record based on that. We'll see.
Wasn't there rumors that the Texas, some of management was open to trading for Baker Mayfield, even though this happened months ago, and some of them got on board with it, but then I guess they all lost interest recently. But
I don't remember the Texans being involved directly, but yeah, I mean, they don't have a deep quarterback room, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were at some point in time.
Yeah.
Davis Mills.
But Davis Mills in only 13 games, he still only had one less touchdown than Baker. Baker had 17 touchdowns in 14 games. Mills had 16 touchdowns in 13 games. Baker Mayfield also had 3 more interceptions than him. And let's see, Davis Mills completed passes at a rate 6.8% higher than Baker Mayfield. So actually, Davis Mills comparatively to Baker last season was much better.
Except for commercials.
That explains why they didn't want to replace Mills with Baker, because that's pretty much a lateral move.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I swear, we continue to get Baker Mayfield, First Energy Stadium commercials. That's going to be sad.
I'm really intrigued about that because what's the doctor that they have on there? I love that guy. Dr. Whatever his name is. His commercials are not only better than Baker's, but I know football season is slowly approaching. Are you going to do moving insurance? I don't know what the agenda is for Progressive, but they got some decisions to make.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be fun. This season's going to be really fun. That's why I'm so intrigued by the schedule release next week. Coincidentally enough, it's the day of our show, so maybe we'll talk about that. We'll see.
Fascinating.
Anyway, so we talked a lot about the draft and stuff. So let's move on to the NBA playoffs. So there's no games on tonight because for some reason the NBA wants to give teams more than a day off. Makes no sense, but whatever. So we got 76ers Heat game 2 last night. And Jay, you and I were talking about this. I think you and I agreed about 3 out of 4 series on this. That
I think so.
If Philadelphia, Boston, and Memphis wanted to win their respective series, they had to win game 1.
Yes.
None of them did.
No. So they are in trouble.
Yes.
Especially Memphis. Yeah, no.
You think Memphis is the most in trouble out of those 3?
Well, no. Actually, no. I think the most in trouble is Philadelphia by a long stretch. But I think they all are in trouble. But let's talk about the Memphis series for one. So like we stated, they should have won that game 1, and they let that slip through their cracks, right?
Yeah.
Had they won that, they're up 2-0 going into Golden State, which their chances, you would have to like their chances a lot better. But with you going into Golden State, I could easily see them dropping those next 2 games. Easily. Because of the environment. So they go down, let's say they go down 3-1, coming back to Memphis. Yes, they're getting closed out. Absolutely, right? With the 76ers series, they're down 0-2. It is starting to look like Embiid may be out for games 3 and 4. That's the last I heard of that. They can't obviously win with James Harden. He looks like a shell of himself. Looks out of shape. Maxey look like he's carrying the team. And it's just, they don't have the, you know how, like at the end of the season, they had more camaraderie. It just seemed like they just going through the motions and no one really likes each other, man. And it's always that cloud that follows James Harden. So I wonder if they're starting to feel that as well. But they could possibly win game 3. I don't know, but I don't see them winning 2 in a row. So I could easily see the Heat going up 3-1, coming back to Miami, closing them out. Milwaukee, that's a little different, right? Milwaukee was coming out guns a-blaze in the first game. Boston neutralized it, but it was still close. So I could easily see that series going 7 games, unlike the other series. And then, it's just showing that what it shows on paper ain't what it shows when it comes to playoff basketball. Throw all that stuff out the window because this ain't regular season.
Yeah, I understand that. I agree with you that Philadelphia is the most in trouble, but I would say the gap between them and Memphis is extremely close when looking at that. Mostly because of what you were saying. I don't think Memphis is winning either game in Golden State. I really don't. Clay and Steph seem to play totally different when they're at home. And that makes sense. A lot of players play differently when they're at home versus on the road. Which you can take that for what you will. But with that crowd behind them, you really think Steph and Clay are going to continue to shoot like as poorly as they have in this series? No.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that the Warriors are going to end up winning the series pretty easily now.
Yeah.
I think that you're right, Josh, that the Grizzlies had to win that first game if they wanted a chance. And I think that the only reason that they did win game 2, part of it is that they're a young team and that building was just electric, so like they really fed off that energy. Ja had an insane performance. So everything had to go right for them to win that game. You know what I mean? It was like everything went their way. And I just don't see it going like that at Oracle Arena. It's just not going to happen like that there.
How about Dallas? How about the Dallas series? What you think about that?
That series is over also.
Yeah, they're dead. They're dead. That might be a sweep.
I was the biggest Luka fan, man.
Me too. I love Luka.
Man, it's only so much he could do. Son's got everything going.
Exactly. I think we're on a collision course for Phoenix Golden State in the Western Conference Finals. And I feel like every game of that series is just going right down to the wire, like final seconds, who's going to hit the last shot. That series is going to be fantastic. I can't wait.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best matchup of the postseason, best potential one.
Yeah.
I do like the Boston-Milwaukee matchup, though. I
agree.
I think this is a great series. And I still pick the winner of this series to make it to the finals.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think these are the two best teams in the East. And I don't think that Miami can hang with either one of these two teams. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Like, Miami, they're the best team in the East according to record. But when you watch them on the court, I agree. Boston and Milwaukee are the two best teams. I think Milwaukee winning game one without Chris Middleton, that could be a bad thing for the rest of the league, because for the Bucks to be able to overcome that.
Yeah, that's one of their big pieces.
Correct.
So, whereas other teams, you look at Philly without Embiid, like other teams really suffer when their guys are out. So, yeah, that was a big eye-opener to some teams to be like, oh, shit, if they can win without him.
How long is he out?
Oh, geez. He may miss this entire series against Boston from what I've heard.
Yeah.
That's going to be tough right there.
Yeah. But here's the thing with the Bucks. Like, Middleton went out, and what did they do? They put Bobby Portis into the starting lineup. So now their front line is Brook Lopez, Portis, Giannis.
I don't like Portis, man. It just really irks me. I don't know. It's just I don't know about the sunglasses or just something about him, man. It's just, it's not my cup of tea.
Okay. But, Boston, how's Boston supposed to match up with that? Like, their starting front line is, Robert Williams, who I would say is more of a defensive player than an offensive player. You got Al Horford, who he's a good player, but I think his best days are behind him. And Jayson Tatum, who's a budding superstar, but undersized going up against Giannis. So,
yeah, I don't know. I think Middleton being out for this series, because he is expected to be out. He might even be out the whole next series too, if they do win the series. But yeah, that's why yesterday, Josh, I said I'd like the Celtics to win this series. I think they did prove they can win without him, but I still think they're much, much better with him. So yeah, I like the Celtics to win this 1-7. But it's close. It's razor thin.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Brian, but here's my thing. In order to win game 2, Boston needed to make a lot of three-pointers. Like, they were crazy good from three-point range. I don't remember exactly how good they were. I'll look it up right now.
46.5%. So, yeah, really good. Almost 50% from three.
So, I just don't know if they can replicate that the rest of the series. So, that's why I'm leaning more towards Milwaukee. I trust them to –
yeah, but they won by 23 points. So it's not like they won tight. You know what I mean? So even if they don't shoot the three ball like they did, they still got 23 points to make up. So I don't know if that's the difference or not, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah. It's just like, it's hard for, when you shoot that well, it's hard for you to replicate that.
Especially on the road.
Exactly. So, I would say these have been fantastic playoffs overall.
Yeah, they've been good. No pun intended, but not as much firepower as probably them UFC matches that's set up for this weekend. But they've been solid.
Yeah, we'll get into the UFC towards the end of the show, because there is a big pay-per-view this weekend. But anyway. A couple of the first round series were duds in that, like, you knew Milwaukee was going to beat Chicago. You knew, New Orleans pushed it to 6 games against Phoenix, but you're just like, there's no way the Pelicans are actually beating the Suns.
Right.
Miami destroyed Atlanta. So it's just like, that was a bit of a dud in that regard, but at the same time, these second round matchups have made up for it.
Yeah. My fear is that the Eastern Conference Finals are going to be a dud. Because I do think that that's just a mismatch for either of those two teams. So, yeah, this might be the best basketball we see in the Eastern Conference playoffs until the finals.
Unfortunately.
So let me ask you this then, based on that. So in the WNBA, they do it where, if I remember correctly, the finals could end up being like 2 Eastern Conference teams or 2 Western Conference teams. I'll have to double check on that, but if that is the case, would you like to see the NBA adopt a similar thing where, like, let's say the Celtics and Bucks were to meet in the NBA Finals? Or, like, we get Warriors Suns, not in the Western Conference Finals, but for the NBA Finals. Would you like something like that?
No, I think the time's passed for that. I think during the heyday of the LeBron era, they probably could have been good with trying to incorporate that playoff style. But now that the East has caught up, or some would say surpassed the West, I think they need to just leave it alone, let it play out. But a couple of years ago, they probably would have had some type of traction with that for sure.
Yeah, there was for a while there when the Western Conference just dominated the NBA. I would have been on board with that, Josh. But now I think I'm with Jayson. I think the problem kind of fixed itself. It was like something that the tide turned. It was only a matter of time, and now I think the time has come. We've seen the Bucks win, we've seen the Raptors win. Like, these are small market teams in the Eastern Conference winning titles. The Cavaliers, them too. So when you look at 3 small market, 1 Canadian team and 2 Midwestern teams winning the finals in the past 5-6 years, like the East has really caught up, and so I think that right now this is the way it should be. I do think that, it could lead to better matchups ultimately, but I just think that it's not bad enough now that it needs to be shaken up. It's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it type thing. Like, if the playoffs really get bad, then we'll revisit it next season and, go from there. But right now, I think the NBA is in a pretty good spot.
Okay, that's fair. So
I think the NBA wanted parity really bad. I think they wanted a team like the Cavs to win. They wanted a team like the Raptors to win. They wanted a team like the Bucks to win. Because now you've got, Middle America's involved in the NBA again. And for a long time, we weren't. It was the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks, the Los Angeles Lakers, and whatever Western Conference team at the time was, up there. And, Golden State and shoot, even once upon a time, Sacramento was a really good Western Conference.
It was loaded too, man.
So there was a time when the entire middle part of the country was just like left out of the basketball conversation, and that's the days are behind us. So I like the way that it's built now. I think it's definitely an interesting idea and worth talking about. But no, I think that not yet.
Okay, that's fair. So we only have like 10 minutes left in the show already. Time flies when you're having fun. So, Brian,
shit to talk about today. So
I know, Brian, we have game 2 tonight at Madison Square Garden. What do you think? Can the Penguins take both games in New York?
No. I mean, I think winning game 1 was really kind of miraculous. It took everything they had in them to win that game in the third overtime with the backup to the backup goalie in. But Domingue, he came in and did a really nice job and stopped, I think it was 17 or 18 shots, didn't give up a goal. But I just don't know that he'll be able to sustain that for 3 periods against the Rangers. And then the other thing is we have a really tough time scoring on Shesterkin. We only scored 4 goals on him in 4 regular season games. And even though we did score 4 goals last game, it took 79 shots to get there. So he was still saving 95, 96% of all the puck shot at him. So like it's going to take him having a bad game and us having a really good game, but it's possible for sure. After seeing what happened last game, anything's possible.
Yeah.
If you would have told me that DeSmith would go down in second overtime and Domingue would come in and we would somehow win that game, I would have told you you're crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anything's possible. It's a veteran team. They've been there. They've done that. So they're in as good of a position as any team to overcome their shortcomings, because of that veteran leadership that they have on that team.
Yeah. You know what I compare this Rangers-Penguins series to actually is the Grizzlies-Warriors series, where the Warriors are that veteran team where they've been there, done that, and the Grizzlies are the young, up-and-coming, inexperienced team. I think it's the same thing with this series. Penguins, they've got Crosby, they've got Gensel, Malkin, who've been there, done that. Mm-hmm. Brian Rush as well. Whereas the Rangers...
A bunch of guys that have 3 cups. So
yeah. Whereas the Rangers, they're that young, up-and-coming team. They've got nice pieces. Artemi Panarin, Chris Kreier, Shesterkin.
Lafreniere, he's going to be a really good player. He's still really young.
Yeah.
Number 1 overall draft pick. He was one of the highest touted recruits since Crosby. So he's a guy that can still develop into a weapon there. So, yeah, it's a really good analogy. I still think they're the better team and they should win this series. But it's the Penguins, man. like they've done it before. They can do it again. So I'm not burying them yet. But my money is still going to be on the Rangers if I had to put it one way or the other.
Yeah. Have you been following the Stanley Cup playoffs at all, Jay?
Negative. But I do know that the Rangers, they do have a setup for them to potentially win that series against Pittsburgh. We'll see. But it's usually like the best teams always win. So, you got the Avalanche. They may go on to win their series. And then you got Florida. Washington is up. I can still see Florida eventually taking the lead in that series and closing them out. And then you got the Stars and the Flames. I like Calgary, but I'm not really that big of a hockey follower to give a thorough analysis. But I bet on these teams during regular season, and the teams I usually would bet on are the teams that's winning. So
yeah, cream rises to the top in the postseason. That's the great thing about the Stanley Cup playoffs is it really separates teams. And at the end of the day, I do think that New York's a little bit deeper of a team, and they've got a great goaltender, probably the best goaltender in the NHL right now. Whereas we're dealing with, Casey DeSmith, who was already a backup goaltender, and now he's out. So now we're playing with who at one point in time was an emergency goaltender. So yeah, it's a really bad situation for the Penguins to be in, and that's the only real reason that I came into the series going, New York's probably going to win it.
Yeah.
If Jari's healthy, totally different conversation.
Yeah. Penguins actually had to call up Dorio from Wilkes-Barre Scranton because of their goaltender situation.
How did and I briefly know how that works. So if I understand this correctly, you only got one backup goaltender, and then if something happens to him, they got to get somebody off the street or something. Somebody signs up for it.
A lot of teams have minor league systems that are close enough that they can commute in a day's time. But some teams, like if you're on the road and a guy gets hurt and a guy can't catch a bus to the game, they have these backup emergency goaltenders that are people that a lot of them have full-time jobs, but every team has one. Every team's got a guy that if something goes down, hey, you got to be ready to get up and play.
That's wild.
It does not happen very often. So when it does, it's a big story. But yeah, that's the reality of it. You had it pretty much on the nose. You're like, it can't be that way, can it? But it is.
Yeah, I watch the TV just some random dude that he work at a factory and he's like, oh, you got to play tonight. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, just off the strip, you playing in NHL, you gotta be a tough dude. You gotta be cut differently to work to play in that league. And then you ain't practice, you ain't skating. I just feel like you need a little bit more training than just a couple of hours.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I just think that goaltender in the postseason is probably the most valuable position in hockey.
Ah,
If you've got a goaltender that gets hot, you can be a team that barely made it by the wild card, but ends up, making a run at the cup. We've seen teams do that in the past that weren't expected to make a run, but a goaltender got hot and, it launched their career. Like a lot of guys get their start by having good performances in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Shesterkin. I'm not sure exactly how you say it. Igor, he's a stud, man. I love that kid. Like he looked amazing. In my opinion, he was still the player of that game, despite losing.
Yeah. All right. So we got about 5-ish minutes left. There's a big UFC pay-per-view on Saturday. I'm going to try and watch it. I don't know if either of you are. But in the main event, we got Charles Oliveira defending his lightweight belt against Justin Gaethje. I got Oliveira winning this fight. I just think Oliveira has way more tools to win this fight, whereas like Oliveira can submit you, he can knock you out. He can win this fight if it goes to the ground. He can win the fight if it stays on the feet. Whereas when I watch Gaethje, I think the only way he wins is if it stays on the feet. He seems like a pure striker to me. I haven't seen like any type of ground game from him or anything.
well,
Yeah, that's a very good assessment of his game. I like Oliveira in this fight a lot. I agree with you. He's got way more tools in his tool belt, black belt in jiu-jitsu. Whereas Gaethje's more of like a power guy. If he's going to win, it's going to be one on his feet. Oliveira's, already beat the best of the best up and down this division. Poirier is the only other one really that I think is even in position to fight Oliveira again. I just haven't seen enough from, Makhachev or Dariush or some of these other guys down the list. So at the end of the day, I think after Oliveira wins, we might see an Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier. Would it be part 2 or part 3? I know they fought
part 2.
Part 2, yeah. I think part 2 might be coming if that's the case.
that'd be nice.
And I think that's the best matchup too. So to answer your question, Josh, I think that he wins the fight, Oliveira wins the fight, and then who would I want to see him fight? I'd want to see him fight Poirier again.
I'd be interested in a champion versus champion fight if Volkanovski were to move up and face Oliveira. I think that would be a fantastic matchup.
That would be a great match. I don't know if he's going to move up or not, but
Volkanovski expressed interest in doing that in his post-fight interview after being the Korean Zombie.
Yeah, I know he'll do it for sure. I know he would do it. I just don't know. I don't know what the motivation would be for
Oliveira.
Yeah, I don't know why he would be motivated to take that fight, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that he might be more interested in sticking to, the people in his division, because he's dominating that division right now. So why step out of your comfort zone? For some guys, some guys are like, okay, this is a multi-division champ. Like that's the only way he'll live up to his potential. I don't think that Oliveira is that guy. I think he's a really good lightweight, and that's where he, that's where he's at his best, and I think that that's where he belongs fighting. So,
okay. And then in the co-main event, we've got a rematch like 7 or 8 years in the making. Rose Namajunas is defending her strawweight belt against the original strawweight champion, Carla Esparza. I think I haven't seen much of Esparza. I've watched more Rose Namajunas fights.
Mm-hmm.
But based on what I've seen, I think Rose is going to be able to win this fight. I don't think Carla is going to be an easy opponent for her. I could see this fight going to the judges. If it doesn't, Rose probably gets the win in the championship rounds 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. I think that this one, it's Rose by a landslide. I just think Rose has gotten so much better in her last few fights. And like that first time they went up against each other, not the same fighter whatsoever.
Agreed.
Rose is 4 inches taller. She's got 2-inch reach advantage. And it looked really good in her last fight out. I think that the only thing that Rose was missing before gaining this belt was the confidence. I thought she was the best fighter in the division before she held the belt, but she didn't have that. You could tell she didn't have the confidence. And when you saw her finally overcome that and win that belt, like you saw her pre-fight, like saying, like, I'm the best, I am the champion, I am the best. It's just like she seems like she's overcame that mental part of the game that she used to struggle with, and because of that, I think she's really scary right now.
Yeah,
confident Rose is a scary Rose, and I think she's confident right now.
Yeah. You got any thoughts on this one, Jay?
I'm just go with Rosa. Seems to be the favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's all the time we got for today. We will talk about those 2 fights definitely next week because those are 2 big ones.
Yeah, and don't forget Tony Ferguson and Michael Chandler. That's going to be a fantastic fight as well.
Yeah, good card this weekend. If you can, definitely, I would recommend purchasing.
Yep, but that is going to be all the time we have on this week's episode of the Sports Generals. Thank you very much for tuning in. Can't wait for next week's show as it is schedule release day for the NFL. I'm super excited about that. But before we go, make sure you, like I said at the beginning, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Sports Generals on YouTube, like the So What's the Catch Facebook page, subscribe to Manalytics as usual, subscribe to Brian Fraley on YouTube, and subscribe to UngarToTheMax. You guys want to plug anything else?
You did it all, brother.
You got it.
Also, listen to what is your podcast, Brian? Guarding
the Corner. This is Believeland podcast. I actually have to go because we're getting ready to record that in a few minutes. So, yeah, make sure you guys check that out too on thisisbelieveland.com.
All right. Link to that podcast will be in the description of this video. See you next week.
Peace.